And John, of course, you have, a long-standing, sort of relationship with as well, don't you? I mean, how would you two have sort of like first met? I mean, down in Dorset?
We actually did first meet in Dorset. I was playing an interval spot in a pub in Cheddington, in Dorset, and it was just a village pub. And he'd come to watch me because he was looking for a backup singer, guitar player for his band, and somebody had said, oh, there's this new girl, Polly Harvey, you should go and check her out. But John was actually living in Bristol at the time, so he'd come down to watch me. And then after my interval spot, and I mean, at that time you have to understand that John was like a superstar in Yeovil, Somerset and Dorset and Bridport, and so it was a great honour that he was there. And he had his own band, Automatic Dlamini, and I loved that band. They're very, very weird band. I don't know if you ever heard anything they did, but it was 2 drummers and a bass player, and that was it. And they all sang very intricate harmonies, and it was very, very intricate playing. And Rob Ellis, who became my drummer, was playing in that band. So after seeing me, John invited me to do an audition. He didn't tell me I was the only person who was auditioning, so I was terrified and went to this audition with John. And that was my sort of introduction, the way I met him. And I played in his band for about 3 years and was writing my own songs at the time, and then gradually put my own band together. Never really left Automatic Dlamini. It just dissolved, really. Other things came into John's life and it just sort of dissolved away.
Why does that relationship work so well together? Am I right in saying that you're going to be working together with each other quite soon, next year?
We've just written, it's already finished, a sort of second album to Dance All at Last Point, which was our first collaborative album together. And John quite simply writes all the music and I write all the words, and it's a fascinating project for me because I'm never otherwise in that situation, and so I never know what he's going to give me. And he's a very obtuse, obscure musician that comes up with ideas just very left of centre, I would say, but then sparks off ideas in my lyric writing that I'd never do if just left to my own devices. So it works very well, that partnership. And like I said, we've written this new record, hoping to get it out next September, I think.
Well, we're going to pause for some live music now. Polly, what are you going to play for us, and what exactly are you playing as well, instrument-wise?
I'm going to do the piano, which actually is played on the guitar, which is a little bit confusing. But yeah, I'm playing this on the guitar and the Moog Taurus pedals.
And the song, again, I mean, the inspiration for this sort of, kind of lyrically. I mean, you mentioned earlier on about, being inspired by, perhaps the books you're reading, or, paintings that, what's been the inspiration, collectively for, these body of songs?
Well, if I'm ever asked that, I can only really say life, day-to-day life. And it can come in all shapes and forms. It can be in my immediate surroundings, or friends, or family, everything around me, or it can be as much as global things, what's happening in the world, the news. And this is a classic example, actually. The piano came from a news story that I felt very upset by, and it was a news story. I was living in the States at the time. It's just about a girl that was found 8 years after her death, wrapped in a blanket in a boot with her teeth smashed in, and it was sort of, I can just remember, and I'm sure many people are like this, when you see something on the news and you feel utterly shocked, you feel like, how could anybody have done that? And I can remember feeling that, and I know that the only way that I could identify her was from her teeth that were remaining, and you just can't help but feel for the family, and she'd had children, and I was just so moved. And I can remember going to my own piano afterwards, and I always have the front off of my piano. People that have seen me live know that, because I like looking inside the mechanism, because it's such a beautifully put together instrument. It's like the automata of it all, the way it all works. It's all very primitive in a way. And to me, the piano looks like ribcage and teeth and bones, and I just felt so touched by this poor woman, and that's where the song started coming out of. And obviously then it takes its own course, and I knew nothing of her life other than the news story, but that's the way it works with writing, is that you somehow can be moved by something, anything, and then bring in other reflections and create a picture around it that hopefully will make other people feel something.
BBC London 94.9, and it's a 1 hour special with singer-songwriter PJ Harvey, and That's Joe, which was one of the bonus cuts to Sheila the gig from 1992. Does it seem that long ago, Polly? Is it weird to think of it in those terms?
That's interesting. It's a question obviously I never asked myself, but when you ask me right now like that, it doesn't seem so long ago. And I think in a way because the songs stay with me. Not all of them, and it depends very much on the song. That song is still a song I could play now and feel happy playing. And I love that song, but also I always love demo versions of songs because there's something so different about them. And I can remember being so excited at that time. What was it, 1990, 91 that I wrote that? Because I was just starting to discover bands like the Pixies, for instance, and their technique of doubling up on guitar, simply to build a chorus, literally just bring another guitar in, doing exactly the same thing. And I can remember starting to use that, thinking, this is great, yeah, it's just building layers of guitars, all doing really simple things. And also, I mean, when I was at art college, and I think I was also at this time, I was still doing a foundation course, but all of my work at college was always minimal and very similar to my writing as a songwriter. It's very, very simple, very minimal. So, doubling up, just doing the same thing would be the kind of stuff I'd be doing in my artwork as well. It's all very black and white, very simple.
And what about memories of that time as well? I mean, kind of sort of starting out. I mean, would you have, sort of memories of, coming up to play, London for the first time, and some of those kind of early sort of reactions? What kind of places are we talking about?
Oh, I remember one of the first shows was what was called the Sausage Machine, and I think it was actually in a pub called the Half Moon, and it was run by Too Pure, which was Richard Roberts and Paul Cox. And
the label that you eventually signed with,
They signed me. One of the first shows I did was with them, and they asked if they could give me some money and that I would put a record out. And I think that was on the third gig I'd ever done with my three-piece band. And I think we played about 3 other shows before the record came out. And it took off really quickly, really, really quickly.
Let's go back even further if we can as well. I mean, and talk about, growing up in Dorset, which is where, you still live as well. I mean, despite having lived in, various other, cities around the world, including in London for a while as well. I mean, was it Tottenham that you lived in?
Yeah, I lived in Tottenham for a while. Yeah.
Good memories of living here in London?
I can remember because when I came to Tottenham, it was the first time I'd ever moved away from home. And I think I must have been, 19 or something. And I'd moved up here in preparation for going to art school, because I'd won a place at St Martin's to do sculpture. And so I moved up with a friend of mine who was also moving up to do a degree in anthropology, she was, and so we were flat sharing. But I can remember just being very nervous because I'd never been in such a large city, and I'd never been in that situation. I mean, it sounds really simple and like almost a caricature to say, but to walk down the street and not say hello to everybody was a new thing for me.
Yeah.
I did really come from a very simple and remote area. I don't mean simple as in thick, but just very life kind of very, very different.
Yeah. I mean, how jarring was it then? I mean, for somebody who had sort of grown up like that. I mean, to sort of be in the middle of this.
It was it was so different. It was shocking to me, and very quickly adapted to it. But I didn't necessarily like having to do that, and it felt odd to walk around and not. And sort of have this anonymous head down type of thing. But I very quickly, you have to learn to do that when you're travelling on the underground. I remember Tottenham was, back then, it was still quite a a dangerous place to walk home at night from the tube. Yeah.
And then, you know, going back even further, so, you know, let's talk about sort of growing up in Dorset and, you know, the influence of your parents as well, because I think, you know, one of your parents is a sculptor, and the other is a stonemason, I think.
A quarryman, yeah. He actually quarries enormous pieces of stone out of the ground, and then they break it down to make it into stone for housing or building walls or fireplaces. And then gravestones, which my mum does the leisure cutting for the graves, and they're very, very creative people, my mother and my father. And actually, they both started off as drafts people in Western's helicopters, actually. So they, you know, they came from drawing and from creating, and as children, my brother and I were always making things. And my mother was wonderful in sort of, I mean, because she enjoyed it as much as we did, but always having us in an environment where we could make things all the time, and it's just naturally what we wanted to do.
Well, let's play another track, and then we'll talk some more. We'll talk some more afterwards. Polly's album is out now. The album's entitled White Chalk, and I'd like to play a track called Dear Darkness as well, which is the second one.
I love that song. Yeah.
Why is that one a special one for you?
I just think it turned out just beautifully. It turned out better than I ever could have imagined it, and I love that John is singing on it as well. I love the harmonies, and it was the first time I'd ever had a chance to work with Jim White from the Dirty Three, who's an incredible drummer. And in fact, he's never somebody I would call a drummer. He's more like I always think of him almost like a dancer or a painter. He's so expressive. He never plays the same thing twice. He doesn't just hold down a beat. He decorates the vocal, decorates the song. And actually, he and I put that song down live together, and that's what you're hearing. It's just, we just played together, and I was listening to him, he was listening to me, and that's what you're hearing, and that you can hear that in the song, and I think it turned out beautifully.